Okay, so I think we're on air. Um, I'm here with Aaron and also Carl. Uh, we're going to be presenting in the, we're going to be starting in a little bit. Aaron's going to be speaking about some exciting new Facebook advertising techniques, which I think will help us all perform better. I mean, really, like Facebook advertising, there's so many questions about how to do things. You could read all the documentation that you see about it, you could study up on it, but really, at the end of the day, what makes you perform properly isn't just knowing what the rules are. It's about understanding how it behaves. It's about like knowing if you flip this on or turn that off, what the outcome's going to be. And I think a lot of that just basically comes with experience. Aaron's been working at Hampton in marketing for a while, running some very serious Facebook campaigns over there. He has that experience, and I think we're also very fortunate to have Carl joining us, and he will also bring a lot to the table as well. So before we begin, do we have anybody already watching? If so, I'm more than happy to hear where you're from, what you're doing, what you're interested in. Yes, okay, we have Prince Albert. He's really a prince. He's from Saskatchewan, Canada. So Albert, I'm very happy to have you as well. Who else do we have? We have Andre Frazier from DC. And by the way, so we're all from all over the world right now, right? Aaron, you're from Indiana, right? Is that correct?
Correct, Indianapolis.
Okay. And Carl, you're in Tuscany, Italy, I believe.
I am. I'm in Tuscany, Italy. I'm originally English, which my accent might give away a little bit
Yeah.
later on.
Yeah, I was either thinking that or you spent time there, you studied there.
Both.
Yes. London, I imagine.
No, I'm actually from the friendly north.
The North. Okay, so I don't know my accents as well as I thought. Yeah. And I'm,
I've
I'm, I'm
got.
in Northeast. What?
I developed a good international accent, let's say.
That's good. Yeah. So, well, we have an international crowd here. Oh, wow, and I have someone from St. Augustine, Florida, which I don't know if anyone knows this. That's the oldest surviving settlement in the West. St. Augustine was settled by the Spanish in the 1500s, and it's the oldest city that's still around in the Western Hemisphere. I know this because I used to live in Florida. I'm originally from Orlando, and I've been to St. Augustine quite a few times. It's fun. So I'm happy to have you. And wow, we got a TLC marketing from Costa Rica. It's great. And St. Pete, another Floridian. Great. I mean, I've been to St. Petersburg quite a few times. They have the Salvador Dali Museum, which I don't know why it's in St. Petersburg, but that's where it ended up, which is great. Okay, so yeah, I'm really looking forward to this actually because like Facebook ads. I mean, they just make it more and more confusing. I mean, to me, like it's not as complex to use as Google in the aspect that you don't have as many ways to drill down, as many options, as many targeting techniques. You can't segment reports in so many levels. You can't bid adjust on all these different elements like you can with Google. But for some reason, it's just like the rules always seem to change on it. Like you tend to do one thing one day and it doesn't work the next, and you just don't know why. So it's it'll be really good to hear what this group of experts we have has to say regarding that. And we'll just wait a little longer for more people to join. Oh wow, we have an Indian here, unrelated to Indianapolis. Mongolia, that's new. Another Floridian. Wow. Michelle Martin from Miami, Florida. So that's interesting. Florida's got a big presence here. William Rock, he's a very faithful SEM webinar attendee. Always good for joining. And cool. So, guys, Indiana, how's it going over there? Last time I remember dealing with the webinar in Indiana, it was freezing over there, like ridiculously cold.
It goes from freezing to extremely hot, and there's no in between really. So we're kind of experiencing that moment of it's starting to get really hot now. We don't really have a nice spring weather.
Right. What's great today, some crazy heat wave came down. It's like in Fahrenheit, at least like 102 degrees today for some reason. And it's like all
Wow.
misty and yeah, but it's like the air is like heavy. It's like there's some air pollution or something, like dust in the air. You don't see much sun. It's just like really nasty. At least it's dry, but still crazy. Yeah, things are a little bit odd, but great. Okay. So I think I'll go ahead and I'll introduce our speakers. We have quite a people joining, and I mean, the looking to be very, very, very strong. I think it's long overdue. I've been, doing, PPC related webinars on SEMrush for well over a year now, and people have been asking for a while for us to get into Facebook. We're finally doing it, and I think that's why this long anticipated webinar is bringing the attention that it is, and we have all these people watching. So I'll begin by introducing Aaron. Aaron is an Indiana University graduate from Indianapolis, which is where he's currently based. He spent some time in the U.S. Army as a medic. Now he spends his time, managing his PPC campaigns for Handpin and Marketing. It's a very large marketing agency. I think one of the most well-known. Also based in Indiana. He's a basketball fan, loves soccer as well, and video games, which are somehow related. I mean, you play soccer, and the games are so realistic. It's like you're watching yourself play from your sofa in a way. The way they are, the EA Sports is amazing. Right? So yeah, so he's been at Handpin and Marketing for the past 2.5 years. He's been, working in a handful of verticals, most especially that of travel, e-commerce, and also lead gen campaigns as well. So Aaron, again, like I said before, we're very happy and excited to have you. And joining us, we have Carl. He is a digital marketing specialist for BoosterBox. BoosterBox is a very, very excellent, well-performing online marketing agency based in Tuscany, Italy. He's a Facebook advertising specialist there, and he's got experience managing campaigns with various degrees of spend. I mean, he's experienced it from way back in the day, long before Business Manager was around, managing campaigns, from the start, and since then worked his way up to now where he's consistently working in accounts that are spending well over $100,000 a week, mind you. So we're very happy to have him here. He certainly does have the experience to give a lot of value to this discussion. So I think at this point I'll hand over the keys to you, Aaron. You can go ahead if you're ready, share your presentation, and we can begin.
Cool. Let me know when you guys are able to see it.
We're able to see that.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. Yeah. So like we said, we're going to be talking about some ways that we can level up our Facebook advertising today. For the agenda, I kind of want to start things off a little bit simple with the pixel, and we'll build in complexity towards the end. Just going to be talking about how all these tools work together to really build on utilizing Facebook's automation and helping you save time in your day and just get better results from the platform overall. So again, starting with the pixel, starting real simple. You guys probably know what the pixel is, but just in case we have some viewers that don't, I just want to touch on it real quick. But this is going to be our key to unlocking Facebook's powerful tools. So we're going to be able to use the pixel for quite a bit of different things, mainly what we've got listed there in the bullet points. So it's really going to help us track our site traffic and how those users are interacting with our site. It's going to allow us to set up conversion events, and per conversion events, I always give a recommendation that if you have an important action on your website, no matter what it is, turn it into a conversion event. So if it's an add to cart, if it's a purchase, it's a perform fill, a subscription, whatever matters to you, turn it into a conversion event. And that's going to matter a little bit later on in the presentation when we start talking about conversion campaigns. Continue on, the pixel is going to help us measure those conversions across devices to allow you to see the customer journey a bit more clearly. The pixel is going to help learn who's converting on those events that you've set up so you can find more relevant users on Facebook like those users. And maybe most importantly, it's going to help us create some really powerful custom audiences. Two of the tools on the pixel that I see a lot of advertisers come to Handpin with that they don't use are first-party cookies and advanced matching. So both of these tools are available under your pixel settings, and they're easily toggled on and off. First-party cookies and advanced matching both together, they're really just going to help give the Facebook pixel a little bit more in-depth insight into who your users are, learn who those users are, what they're interested in, and then they're going to help you find more users on Facebook like those that are already on your website. But maybe more importantly, especially with advanced matching, is it's really going to help you get around the issue of ad blockers or some of those web browsers that are becoming a bit more restrictive with how long they're allowing to keep data. So advanced matching is basically going to be, it's going to allow us to see if someone's on your website and they're filling out a form. If that user has an ad blocker on, the ad blocker might be blocking a pixel event, so it can't necessarily see that normally. With advanced matching on, the pixel's going to be able to see the data that people input into your text fields and similar things on your website. It's going to be able to take that data and hash it, make it private, and send it back to Facebook to try to match that back up with a user who's on Facebook. So again, just 2 easy tools you can turn on that's really going to help you push the pixel to the next level. So moving right along into conversion campaigns, right after we talk about the pixel, I see a lot of advertisers still using traffic campaigns. And the one thing I always like to tell them is we shouldn't be just going after site traffic. We should be going after people who are going to be taking very specific action on our website. So historically, Facebook campaigns or Facebook traffic campaigns, we're basically just telling Facebook to go after clicky users. These are people who may click on a lot of stuff on Facebook, but they're not necessarily taking any relevant action on our website. There's also a lot of studies Facebook has published that say that clicky users can tend to be more expensive than other users likely to take an action. Whereas with conversion campaigns, after we set up relevant events through the pixel, we can tell Facebook to not just go after someone who's clicking, but someone who's going to click, let the website completely load, and are most likely to take that certain action that you've told Facebook is important to you. So again, with that pixel and the conversion campaigns, we're going to be able to tie conversion events back to Facebook and measure how effective they are. As people start completing those important events on your website, Facebook's going to learn what attributes those users have, and it's going to start helping you find users on Facebook who have similar attributes. And then basically using that, the pixel and the algorithms are really going to learn exactly who they should be serving ads to on Facebook. And that's something you're not necessarily going to get with other campaigns like traffic campaigns. One thing to keep in mind if you are using conversion campaigns is that what Facebook tells us is the algorithms need about 50 conversion events per week to truly optimize. That's just them saying they need enough data to really learn who the users are that it should be going after. And so if you're either struggling to get 50 per week, then I would recommend that you optimize for a higher funnel event. Now, that's just a rule of thumb. Take it with a grain of salt. You don't have to get 50 a week to necessarily get the results that you want. But if you're finding that you're struggling to get the results you want, if you're finding that you're struggling to spend your entire budget with these conversion campaigns, it may very well be that you're just not getting enough conversions on a weekly basis. And so that's where, instead of maybe optimizing for a purchase, we push it up and we optimize for an add to cart and get more users in the funnel. Or instead of optimizing for a form fill, we optimize for a landing page view just to get more people interacting with the ads and on the site. Moving along to exactly who we should be targeting, making sure we're just reaching the right users with our audiences. So the most important audiences for me come from using the pixel and using custom audiences. So you may be familiar with creating custom audiences, but the most powerful ones to me are going to be either creating web users who have been on your website, your web traffic, uploading custom files, or creating, this one I see less used is creating engagement audiences off of people who have engaged with your Facebook page or your Facebook posts or your Facebook ads, and retargeting those users. All these users are really, really great for remarketing. But whatever you do with a custom audience, always try to turn it into a lookalike audience, especially if those users are completing actions that are really important to you. Because lookalike audiences are going to be where you want to spend the majority of your budget in terms of going after an upper funnel audience or a cold audience. So like I had there on the slide, if there's an action that matters to you on your website, turn it into an event, and then track it and create a lookalike off of it. Because if you want to get more purchases, create a lookalike off your purchases and target those users. If you want to get more subscriptions, more email registrations, whatever matters, whatever you want more of, just make it a conversion event and turn it into a lookalike. And that's going to help you get more of those users more efficiently, especially from a cold audience. If you really want to take your lookalikes to a higher level, I would definitely recommend using a customer file and adding lifetime value metrics to that of your highest value customers. And so how this differs from a normal lookalike. So if we're thinking about this in terms of purchasers, we could upload a customer file to Facebook and say, here's all of my purchasers in the last 90 days. Find other users on Facebook like them. Where if we upload a customer list of past purchasers in the 90 days who are highest value customers, so either spend the most, repeat customers, et cetera, we're narrowing that field to tell Facebook to go find other people who are like our highest value customers and not just like all customers. So it's just another way that you can take your lookalikes up to the next level. In terms of our other audience options, I'm sure a lot of people are already familiar with the core audiences that are available on Facebook. So your demographics, your interests, your behaviors. But in case you just don't know where to start, or maybe you're struggling with what current audiences you're using, they're not working, or you need some new ideas, I always recommend what I have here on the slide. So if you have persona targeting, if you're a client, if you're a business, if you've got some persona targeting built out of who your ideal customer is, what they do, what they look like, use that to help craft your targeting. If that doesn't exist or if that's not working and you want something else, I always recommend a really great place to start is Google Analytics. Head over to Google Analytics and start getting a better picture of who your best users are. So look at what ages are providing you the most revenue, what genders are converting the best. Take a look under the interest categories to see things like affinity categories and in-market segments. Take notes on all that stuff, all the important stuff, all the high traffic stuff, and start plugging that into Facebook's tool, Audience Insights. So in this example, if this image isn't clear, I went on analytics. I saw all my best users come from the US. Their ages 25 to 54. And analytics told me that there was a affinity category of travel buffs that was a lot of traffic on my website. And so that easily translates into just interested in travel on Facebook. We can plug that into Audience Insights and we can start seeing what those users look like on Facebook, what they're interested in. So you can look at their demographics or their page likes, and it's going to spit out a lot of information here, and you don't necessarily have to use all of it. But it's also just a really good place to start to get some new ideas if what you're doing isn't working. Moving towards some of the tools that Facebook has put out semi-recently. One is campaign budget optimization. And so the goal of campaign budget optimization is going to help us get the most results for our current budget. So if you don't know what this is, this slide's going to help you better understand that. It's basically just an automated way to budget for our ad sets. So instead of budgeting at the ad set level, we are moving those budgets up to the campaign level. And we're allowing Facebook's algorithms to allocate that one single budget across ad sets to the ad sets that are getting us the most results most efficiently. So like in the example on the right, before campaign budget optimization, we're spending $10 a day on 3 ad sets and getting 10 conversions. Maybe we just don't have enough time to go in there and shift around budgets to really looking at results and where we should be spending. But with campaign budget optimization on, it does that for us. It sees that ad set 2 is we're underspending there and overspending on other ad sets. And so we need to start, it's going to see that and shift budget in real time. And what I've seen how this works really, really well, other than just getting us better results because of automated budgeting, is it opens up so much time for you to focus on other things. So if you have a really big Facebook account that you're advertising in, if you have to manage several platforms, Google Ads, Bing Ads, Yahoo, Facebook, you've got a lot of stuff to do in your day, and a lot of times it's great when you can automate these little things to open up more time to focus on strategy, bigger picture, and maybe testing some creative or other things on Facebook that you just don't have time to. The other important part of this is that Facebook is actually getting rid of ad set budgets this year in September. So if you haven't been acquainted with this tool or haven't gotten a good process in place for it yet, I heavily recommend you start getting used to it now, so you're not rushing at the last minute trying to figure out what the best setup for yourself is. And using campaign budget optimization, I've come across some best practices that I think work really well to help you get the most out of this tool. So every ad set in your campaign needs to be optimized for the same event. If that's a purchase, if that's a form fill, no matter how many ad sets you have in that campaign, they should be all optimized for the same event. Campaigns, again, should be, and within a campaign should be largely similar when we're talking about placements and bidding. The biggest differences you'll come from is your audiences. Always segment prospecting and remarketing audiences into separate campaigns, and make sure that your ads, ad types, landing pages are similar across ad sets. And an example of why this really matters is if we go to that third point and think about prospecting and remarketing. Eventually, if we have both these audiences in a campaign and they're optimized for a purchase, Facebook isn't able to differentiate but necessarily between audiences or what your goals are for those audiences. It just sees events happening. And the remarketing, it's going to see the remarketing campaign is going to be converting at a better rate, at a cheaper rate, and it's going to start funneling all your budget into that remarketing audience, which is going to be okay right out of the gate. But if you keep doing that and you're not spending on your prospecting audiences anymore, you're just killing your funnel. And you're not getting users to being pushed down to that remarketing audience. And so your remarketing audience, it'll eventually dry up and you'll stop getting the results you were seeing. Kind of moving along to some other tools that's really going to help you automate your day-to-day between bidding and automated rules. Unfortunately, right now, like I have mentioned in the slide about automated rules, is these aren't very friendly with campaign budget optimization right now. So it's very limited what you can do. But Facebook tells us that before launch in September 2019, when they're forcing us all to use campaign budget optimization, that they will indeed make sure automated rules work with campaign budget optimization. So moving on to bidding, you've probably seen this window within your ad sets. A lot of times I see it heavily underused or misused. And a lot of people just don't really understand exactly what they should be doing here. But if we're thinking about this in terms of conversion campaigns and using the pixels, we have some options here. And I always tell people to bid based on what's important to you. What's your business's goal? So if your business's goal is you have a very distinct ROAS that you have to get, you need to be doing value bidding and setting a minimum ROAS goal. If you have a cost per acquisition goal, that's really important to you, very specific cost, you do conversion bidding and you set it up with a target cost. By default, Facebook will always do a lowest cost bidding. So basically just helping us get the most results for our current budget. But if you have a goal that you want to hit, I definitely recommend using a bit more of a specific bidding method. These bidding methods are really going to help us control our costs as we scale out accounts or as you scale out across several advertising platforms. It's just one less thing that you have to worry about making sure you're hitting goals. And it's going to be really helpful when you use them in tandem with automated rules. So like I said, automated rules are only available at the ad set level for now, but they will be available at the campaign level before September. And automated rules are even, I find, much less utilized than bidding. And the way I see this is just another means to take advantage of algorithms and machine learning and take the manual work out of our day. So with automated rules, we've got a lot of options. Some of the ones I use the most often are listed there. So I use them to schedule ads a lot. And that I don't mean setting an end date on an ad set, but you can actually set at the ad level with automated rules. I use them a lot to control frequencies, to raise and lower my budgets based on cost per result, or based on return on ad spend. And again, it's just another really good way to help you scale out accounts and make sure that we're always staying within goal. So if you can't see the image on the right, this is an example of a automated rule I use quite often, where I go on the ad set level and I tell Facebook to increase my daily budget by 5% if my return on ad spend is greater than 5. So that's basically me saying that if I've got room to push to get more revenue, I'm going to do it. And I can set the inverse of that as well, where if return on ad spend is lower than a 2, I can tell it to decrease my daily budget by 5%. Just another great way to keep scaling out accounts and making sure that we're pushing budget where it really, really matters. And into the final portion of the slide deck here. And this is a bit more of a meatier section. We're going to be talking about what Facebook likes to call the breakdown effect. And the goal of this section here is to get people to understand that we should stop over-segmenting our ad sets within our campaigns. So to understand what the breakdown effect is, we need to understand how Facebook bids on a real-time basis. And what Facebook uses is called discount bidding. And what that means is that it will always, no matter what your audience is, go after the lowest cost results first. And then once those results are achieved, Facebook has to go after what's left. And by logic, that's the more expensive results. And so what you'll see when you run an ad set a lot is that you'll get a lot of low cost results right out of the gate. But over time, the more time we run that ad set, the more budget we put into it, we see that cost per result rise. And so where I see this issue with over-segmenting ad sets is kind of what this example is going to go over. So a lot of advertisers will come to Hannahpin, and I'll see their accounts and their campaigns. They've got their ad sets segmented out by placement. And the big reason they say is because of how I'm going to describe this example, where we have a campaign that has a $500 budget that runs over 10 days, and we want the lowest cost per acquisition possible for that budget. And in this example, on an ad set level, we have both opted into Instagram stories and Facebook stories in the same ad set. And so we've let the campaign run for 10 days, and we've actually get our results. We pull a placement report to see which placement performed the best. And we see these results where Facebook spent more on Instagram stories, $400 more, even though it had a higher cost per acquisition. And so that's where a lot of confusion comes from advertisers as we ask this question: why is Facebook spending so much on placements that clearly, when we pull a placement report, aren't as efficient? And the reason it does that is what's known as the inflection point, or what Facebook likes to call it. So if we were to get a true breakdown of how this campaign run day to day, and we were able to see what the algorithms on Facebook sees, we would see something like this, where yes, at the start of the campaign, Facebook stories had a cheaper cost per acquisition. And so it front loads those results like I talked about, and we'll continue to spend there until the algorithms start to see that Facebook stories CPA is rapidly increasing faster than Instagram CPA. And so if we continue spending on Facebook, even if it was great at first, our CPA is going to be actually worse than if we were to redistribute that spend. And so if we're doing this, if we're opting into several placements on an ad set level, the algorithms are going to be able to see where that inflection point is and automatically start shifting our budget to the next best placement in terms of efficiency. And this is just another way to look at that, where at the start, the algorithms start testing both placements. And over time, like the discount bidding graph earlier showed, our cost per acquisition is going to rise. But when we opt into more placements, there's an inflection point that Facebook can see, and it's going to automatically shift budget to the next best placement. And like I said, it does this because Facebook front loads our lowest cost results first. the algorithms are going to be able to predict that rise in cost on the placements and shift the budget to the next lowest cost. So in terms of thinking about this, of how I want people to stop segmenting by placement, is to always remember how that average cost per result rises. So if we're always segmenting by placement, that means we're going to see results like in the graph on the right more often and sooner. And if we're not opting into multiple placements, we're never going to be able to experience that inflection point automatically. We'll never be able to take advantage of Facebook's algorithms and machine learning to shift budget in real time. And so that's why, as a best practice, I recommend a healthy mix of placements. So either automatic or at least 4+ in order to help keep your cost per result down. That's really going to help Facebook learn what placements are the best and where to distribute budget most efficiently. And that's something that's very hard to do manually when we break out by placement, because that just creates a lot of manual work for you to do on your own. And with automation, not even just with placements, but with automation in general, campaign budget optimization, for example, I always recommend that you evaluate results at the aggregate level. So again, this could apply to campaign budget optimization with audiences too, making sure that we're not over segmenting or making sure we're spending on the right audiences or the right placements. And that is it for my slide deck. So I believe that we can go ahead and transition into some panel discussion.
Oh, for sure. Wow. I think you gave a lot of value there. A lot of information very quickly. I think we do have a lot of questions as well, just because you touch on some pretty advanced ideas there. Most notably, the idea about, what do you call it, the displacement effect, where
The breakdown effect, yeah.
The breakdown effect. I'm sorry. So
Yeah.
you're saying that basically, like, Facebook experiments, sort of like A/B tests between different placements. It kind of will start off with the one first that it thinks will have the best cost for the result, and then once it starts to exhaust it, it'll jump over to the next best.
Yep, that's exactly how it works.
That's super interesting. Is it similar though with like other elements inside of the campaign, such as like, what if you're targeting multiple geographies? Does it behave the same way?
So that would be more specific if we were using campaign budget optimization,
Okay.
where it's just gonna, on a different level, it's gonna look for the next, either the most efficient first, and then the next best afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I understand. So, okay, so maybe that's a reason. So campaign budget optimization kind of works the same way. Like,
Yes.
maybe you want to segment inside of ad sets, and then it'll jump around. So I think that answers an all-important question about like when to break up campaigns, ad sets into different campaigns versus not. Carl, what is your take on this subject? Because I know you.
Yeah, I think the point on placements is a really valid one, which a lot of people overlook, and for other reasons. So apart from the reasons which Aaron quite rightly put forward, we also have to bear in mind the different audience types. So when we're splitting up Instagram and we're splitting up Facebook, we also need to imagine and understand that sometimes it's a double audience, right? We have an overlap of the people that are in the Instagram ad sets and an overlap of people that are in the Facebook ad sets, and separating them can either mean that you're double serving, or if you try to remove the audiences from the other, means that your audiences are really too small to function. So really, really good point.
Okay.
Yep, and I would say that go along, another reason I've seen people split out by placements is that they always want to make sure that their ads are like really tailored to the specific placement. And with that in mind, you can still opt into multiple placements and just make sure that we're using asset customization. So we're able to be in multiple placements at once, but make sure that we can actually manually tell Facebook to serve a very specific ad on those placements.
Okay, of course, and that's important. The problem with that, though, it's when you have a certain creative and you start doing asset customization, you kind of change the creative because you're forced to modify the layout, right? I mean, like,
right.
If it's really small, you have to eliminate some text, or else it won't be readable, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and again, if I would just say, if you're use that if you're really worried about making sure your ad creative looks as best as possible on certain placements. It's definitely not, you don't have to use it, obviously. Facebook gives recommendations on what asset, like pixels or dimensions, ratios. If you don't want to necessarily give a very unique asset to every placement, I would recommend that whatever image asset or video asset that you use takes up a lot of space within the feed. And so right now, Facebook's trying to push that 1080 by 1080, which used to be very heavy on Instagram, but now they're pushing it pretty heavily on the Facebook feed as well. And that just because that ad takes up more space in the feed, which is great for advertisers.
Yeah. What about those really like tall ones, like the tower ones for stories?
Yeah, you can use those as well. Whatever, it's largely going to depend on what your goals are. But like I said, the more space you take up, the more impact your ad's going to have.
That is true. Okay, I have some questions, by the way, from people listening in. What is this? Uri is asking. Yuri Zimarato. Sorry, Yuri. I'm really sorry about that. Aaron, what is the story with Facebook attribution? Is this view through conversions by default? How would you recommend measuring conversions better besides what we can see in Facebook reporting?
Yeah, so I always tell people who want to advertise in Facebook, it's a very, I would say, and without a better term, it's a very high funnel, much higher funnel than any kind of last click attribution that you might see in Google. A lot of your results you'll probably see are view throughs. And again, you just got to understand how those view throughs impact your advertising. So maybe you don't trust the view throughs. I think you should. If you set up your pixel correctly and track everything correctly, then whatever Facebook is telling you is a conversion that happened because of your ad, you have that conversion. So you don't have to worry about it over reporting necessarily. If you really want a deeper understanding of how people move from Facebook to Google Ads to organic traffic, there's a tool you can use within Facebook actually called attribution, where you can connect all those different platforms together with some, I believe there's just some like URL appendages that you can put into the other platforms, and Facebook will be able to see if someone started on Facebook and ended on Google Ads, and you can see that customer journey a bit better.
Okay, that's very insightful. Thank you very much for that. I have a question related to conversion optimization. Now you said you need 50 conversions per week for it to be effective. Now let's say you have 50. Let's say your account's segmented. Like let's say you're trying many different ad sets. Does it share data across the ad sets about what's working if you're optimizing for the same conversion?
Yeah, I would say it's the event that matters, and not necessarily.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily per ad set that necessarily matters. It is the one single event that you need to get that conversion data to come through on.
So if you create a new ad set, a fresh ad set, is it going to use data from other ad sets or previous ad sets, or is it starting from fresh?
No, it'll use, if you're doing a conversion campaign, it's going to be able to use that historical data of, if people are completing a purchase on your site, and you set up an ad set optimized for a purchase, it already has that purchase data that the pixel has used to learn. So it doesn't necessarily have to learn over from scratch.
Okay. That's very, very good to know. Carl, could you give any recommendations on how to, better use the pixel for conversion optimization?
Yeah, I think one thing about the pixel, which people very kind of don't think about enough, is the size and the integrity of the pixel that you want to use, especially to create lookalike audiences. So the most obvious one would be to say, okay, these people bought stuff. I would really like people to buy more stuff, so go out and find more people like that. However, if you've got a really diverse, let's say, e-commerce site, and you have shoes to trainers to t-shirts and to caps, it would be really valuable for you to make sure that you're segmenting that data based upon the categories that you're actually providing for, so that you can create lookalikes on the specific things. So I really want to create an audience so I can show them the caps. I'm not just going to create a lookalike audience on purchases. What I'm actually going to do is create a lookalike audience on everybody that bought caps specifically, so I can tell Facebook, hey, it's these guys I'm interested in, not the people that bought the t-shirts from the last week. So be as specific as you can there, because the more similar the audience, the custom audience is, then the easier it is for Facebook to go and find the relevant people.
Okay.
Yep, that's a good point. And I would always, to go along with that, definitely, once you've segmented out, is make sure the ad copy is relevant to those users. So don't just serve them a general ad if you're going to segment out like that. Make sure your ads get relevant between t-shirts and shoes as well.
Yeah.
Right. And what about, so what do you guys do when, let's say you're running your campaigns, you launch something new, it runs great. Facebook, as you said, like initially goes for those cheaper conversions, and from the placement that gives the cheapest conversions, and it jumps to the next ones over. And for that chart, where as the days were progressing, the cost per acquisition was going up. What do you do when it gets too expensive and the campaign stalls? I mean, do you then recycle the campaign? You start targeting something new?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a ton of options that you have there. Generally, what you're going to want to look at is something that you can change maybe a little bit quicker than necessarily launching a new audience. So look at your placements. Do you only have one placement or two placements? That might be why you're stalling out. Your reach is just not as high as it would be if you were opting into other placements, giving more to Facebook to test. Look at what you're bidding. So maybe you have a cost per acquisition bid in place and you've given a goal of $50. If you're struggling to get results on that, that's either telling you that you need to maybe possibly raise that cost per acquisition a bit, that goal, or if you're not willing to do that, then start taking a look at how your ads are resonating with your audience. Are they even clicking on them? Are they engaging with them? What's your relevance score? Look at that kind of stuff too, because you may just need to change your ad copy, change the imaging that makes sure it resonates better with the user.
Okay.
I think a good way, we call it audience burnout, if you like, in ad sets. When you totally reach the maximum cheap CPA and now it starts to get a lot more expensive. I think campaign budget optimization is really going to help with that in the future, just automatically anyhow. One thing that you guys can do to help combat that is make sure that you're separating up your lookalike audiences and the audiences that you're using correctly. So, for example, one idea would be to say, these are the people that purchased off me in a lifetime, and you create a lookalike audience from anybody that purchased as far back as Facebook can look, which is great, but you also kind of set yourself up the opportunity to burn that audience out a lot sooner. What I would recommend is to take different stages. So let's say anybody that bought from me within the last week versus anybody that bought from me from 7 to 30 days ago, anybody that bought from me from 30 to 60 days ago. What that does is it gives you lookalike audiences, which are all slightly different, and it's expanding your audience for loads of different people, and you can group them together, which means you have different audiences for Facebook to choose from, and it's not going to burn out your main audience straight away.
You say you group them together as in put them in the same ad set, in the same audience? Are you supposed to put the lookalikes in the same audience, or you
can.
ad set?
You can. That would be the next step. The first step would be to have separate ad sets. So these are the people. Let's say I choose maybe a mixture of both. I choose 5 different lookalikes. One for people who spent the most time on my site, one for people that made a purchase, one for people that signed up to newsletters, so I know they're a loyal customer, for example. We take the same 3 lookalikes and we have 3 different timescales. One will be 0 to 30 days, one will be 30 to 60, the latter would be 60 to 90. And that could just be quite simply 3 separate ad sets within one campaign, where all of the audiences are actually slightly different and hence bigger. Okay, they'll be a lot bigger as well, because each lookalike audience is going to have almost a fixed size. So instead of just 500,000 people in one lookalike audience, you find yourself having an extra 700,000 people and being able to test the differences of which one works better for you. The latter stage will be to group them together.
Yep, and that's a really great point. And I would, to go along with that, I'd definitely say with any lookalike audience, but especially as we're segmenting out by that and getting more, is that if you're doing any kind of additional targeting, be it interest or demographic or behavioral, make sure we're excluding our lookalikes from those ad sets, because that's really going to become an issue with audience overlap, where a lot of those users that exist in our lookalikes exist in our behavioral targeting as well. And we don't want to be double serving ads, because then that skews results, may help prevent us from spending all of our budget too. So that's definitely another really easy thing I see that people aren't doing. That's really easy to do.
I think on that note, Aaron, you also mentioned something which is quite simple, but often overlooked, and that is the Facebook engagement. So retargeting people that actually engage with your ads. This is something which not enough people are doing. I've seen this time and time again, performing at the same level, sometimes even better than people who visited the site. And that's another exclusion, that if you are going to use that, remember that's something you need to exclude as well, excluding people who already engage with an ad.
I never thought about that. I always excluded this because I want to get through marketing, but I never imagined that. Now, what about segmenting? What about experimenting with lookalike audiences that involve a larger percentage of the population? Like instead of targeting 1%, like 1 to 2% or 2 to 3%.
I would say with lookalikes, general rule of thumb, within 1 to 2, maybe 3%. That's where you're going to get your best results, because those users are just more similar to whatever your seed audience was. As you start pushing up into that 10% range, yes, your audience gets a lot bigger, but they're also a lot less similar than if you were to just keep it within 1 to 2%. So your reach gets bigger, but you probably won't see the same results.
But then maybe you won't exhaust it as quickly.
True, but in that case, it's going back to that segmentation of lookalikes, is that you just have to keep finding new ways to either create lookalikes or, at some stage, maybe you do tap out your lookalikes, and that's where you have to go and start spending a little bit more on behavioral targeting or interest targeting.
Or like Carl was suggesting, just like break up the lookalikes by the time periods that they sign up with, so that way they're not all exactly the same.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons we started separating things like that as well is audience burnout is not necessarily determined entirely by audience size. It's also determined by the relevancy of the ads you're serving. So let's take the scenario where I have an audience of 500,000 people, just for argument's sake, and I begin delivering ads. Sometimes I can notice the frequency starting to get really high, even though I've only reached just a fraction of that 500,000 people. So I'm giving Facebook an audience of 500,000. I've only reached 50,000 of those people. However, Facebook is already starting to serve my ads 3, 4, 5 times to people in 1 week. And this is, totally about the relevancy of your ads. If your ads are not relevant to the whole audience, Facebook is not going to push you there. It's going to stick within the tight pocket where it knows it can get some results, and meaning that your 500,000 audience is burning out before you even reach 50,000 people. So don't just look at the audience size there. Make sure that, like Aaron says, you're looking at the ad relevancy. You are still looking at the ad copy. You are still checking how engaging the ad is as well, because you can burn big audiences out quicker than you might imagine.
Now, by the way, is that where maybe running multiple ads can help, like diverse ads? Because maybe like one ad will work better with one segment of your audience, while another ad might work better with a different one.
Yes, for sure. And there's several ad types that just can't run on certain placements as well. And so that's where either asset customization or running multiple ad types will help make sure that we're able to serve on all the placements.
Multiple creatives, though, like different creatives.
No, yeah, like a single image and a video, run it in the same ad set could definitely help you increase your reach there.
Okay, so it's interesting, because I think a lot of people, when they do that, they're thinking, okay, this is an A/B test. I want to figure out which one runs best, and then kill off the other ones. When actually the combination might be running best.
Right.
which I find pretty interesting. So Brittany Zer is asking a good question. Why can't Facebook do the whole do? Why, look at the inflection point when you break out placements into different ad sets. Wait, why do they have to be in? I'm misunderstanding it. It's just the way it's written. I mean, or it's just the way I'm reading. Why do they have to be in the same ad set? She found that with asset customization, you can't copy the ad ID to use the same ad in multiple ad sets. The URL changes. Okay, that's actually more confusing than I thought.
Well, just to address the first part of that question, if we're thinking about that in terms of placement, if we have every single placement broken out into a different ad set in a campaign, there's no possible way to reach that inflection point between placements because every single ad set doesn't have the ability to within itself test a different placement. And so when we start segmenting out, there's only one bar graph that can happen, right? And eventually, if we have, or excuse me, if we have more placements within an ad set, there's several bar graphs happening at the same time, right? Or line graphs, where the inflection point can actually happen in that case. Maybe you can see if you break out by placement like that, you may see if you're using campaign budget optimization, it may favor a certain placement in that term. But I always think about things in terms of efficiency and scale. So, I mean, if you have a big Facebook account and we're always breaking out by placement like that, it just becomes an absolute headache to manage, to try to get new ads and manage across all those different ad sets. Where if we get everything into one ad set, we just give Facebook's algorithms a lot more data to learn and play with.
I mean, I would say I'm definitely with you on that, Aaron. I would say a lot of the situations I've been in where we would have to separate placement would be either more complex situations where a client has a specific goal. They're trying to build brand awareness and they really want to have X amount of reach on Instagram, which is fair enough. Then, you know, go for the split. But if not, then we should be grouping them together as much as we can. The only other option why you might want to split a little bit more, and you can do this within ad set anyway, is to have more control over the creative assets. So
Right.
If you're the type of company which is, you know, producing content on a daily, weekly basis the whole time, then perhaps you might benefit from the split. But in the most cases, the more that we can group together, Facebook is moving towards that, and we need to move with them or we'll get left behind.
Right.
That's some good advice there for sure. I have a question from Maxime Reva. Aaron, so which tools do you use on an everyday basis for managing campaigns? Any type of dashboards or, you know, any other, you know, third-party tools that integrate Facebook?
Like I said in my slides, campaign budget optimization for sure. Unless you wanting to use automated rules. So I have a couple clients of mine who we've got some automated rules set up at the ad set level, and they are just giving us great results. So no reason to rock the boat just yet until they're compatible with campaign budget optimization. So those are two things I look at on a daily basis. In terms of other tools, I mean, I think ads managers, just ads reporting in terms of metrics, there's a lot you can look at there. I rarely use their default ones. I'll always set up custom views for different clients, because different goals for different clients, different goals for your business. You can really look at what matters to you on a bird's eye view. But yeah, I mean, in terms of other tools, I think another good one that's a bit outside of Ads Manager that was recently launched was the Facebook Ads Library that Facebook just launched. So it's kind of the new way to look at what ads competitors are running that used to exist on a person's or a business's Facebook page, but now it exists on its own unique URL, and that's going to give you a lot of insight into what your competitors are running.
What about that Excel plugin that they have?
I don't necessarily use that a lot myself. What about you, Carl?
We're very tech heavy, so it's probably unfair. Everything that we use tool-wise, we build ourselves. I would say there was apart from the really, really tech-heavy development side tools, there are 2 or 3 tools which you guys can build at home. One of them in related to automated rules. Of course, your automated rules need to have a benchmark, right? And the benchmark only comes from you. So we started off with a simple tool on spreadsheets where we can download the information on campaign level. From this, we can start to work out the average CPM, the average CPC for that campaign, and use this to help you create the automated rules on a campaign level. So instead of just having your targets, which is one thing, if you set a target on a campaign which has been running for a long time of if the ROAS is less than 4, turn it down, perhaps in that particular campaign you have some other soft objectives, or perhaps the goal is a little bit different there. So having a simple spreadsheet where you can add some multipliers and create some formulas which tells you, hey, if this is my average score here, then when I get to X CPM, turn my ads off. Or when I get to X CPC, give me a notification. And that was really, really helpful for me just to develop that tool and be able to plug and play and have an automated rule system which I could be confident is based upon the right metrics.
Very insightful, for sure. Of course, I do know about your company, and I know that you guys are doing some next level stuff when it comes to handling data and automation and scripting. It's pretty incredible. But yeah, we can definitely do some stuff on our own. And you know, of course, Facebook is giving us more and more tools by the day, or by the quarter or year even. So you know, but still, it is very useful. So one last question. Someone's asking, is there a learning period for campaign budget optimization?
I think with anything you do on Facebook, there's always a learning period. I always say that Facebook can detect results pretty rapidly, and with campaign budget optimization, or even with like ad types, right? We may launch at the beginning and we could probably start seeing Facebook start favoring a certain audience or a certain ad within 24 hours. A lot of that has to do with your budget too. So the more budget we spend there, the quicker the algorithms are going to be able to learn where to spend that budget. So yeah.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah,
okay,
I think so I was just going to say that point it's a really good point, because a lot of people don't realize how much Facebook is learning about you, your company, and your activity as you actually go, right? So for example, if we were to take the same ad, the same text and the same headline on 2 separate accounts, then we're bound to get 2 separate CPMs, because Facebook understands already from your past activity how different people are reacting to your account's ads. So it's really important to remember that Facebook has data and it will use it on your behalf or against you.
So that's might be a reason why sometimes you might want to open up new accounts, right? Like if you're trying a totally different conversion funnel or sales funnel in your website, and conversions don't mean the same thing necessarily, would it be smart, because without you on the account level, to maybe open a new account?
Yeah, for sure. We've had similar issues with that. With an in particular client, we were running on desktop and desktop alone for a long time, tracking issues. It came from client side, and desktop is, don't quote me on this, but it's around about 8% of Facebook's inventory. So we're working with a very small section of the machine, which is Facebook. And when we started to use mobile, we noticed our CPMs were super high. And we were curious and kind of suspicious that it might be for that reason. And we opened up a new account, and straight away we saw the CPMs being lowered straight away. So yeah,
it could be a good idea to experiment with different accounts sometimes if things get stuck.
Yeah, I mean, don't go crazy on that idea and use it as an excuse straight away, like my account, and have 100 different accounts, because it's going to make your life hell as well. But yeah, if you're doing a totally different activity, or you're changing something completely and you've not got a lot of data and you're not really held to that specific account, for sure, I think it's a good bet to open a new account sometimes.
Okay, it's good to know. Okay, so we have about 1 minute left. How about we finish it off with a takeaway? If there's one thing you could give us, Carl, Aaron, that we can take home with us.
Yeah, I would say kind of like what Carl already mentioned, is that Facebook's really heavily pushing for automation on all levels. and to kind of, they're really wanting to force advertisers to trust their machine learning and their algorithm. So the more you try to fight against that by segmenting out and controlling things manually, eventually it's just going to become a headache for you. So you need to learn how to use these automation tools now and use them effectively to be prepared for the future.
Okay.
Yeah, I think along the same note, preparing for the working with the machines, I call it. One of the things we didn't mention yet, it's quite new and it's really simple for you guys to use if you haven't already, is dynamic delivery on creatives. So now you can add 4, 5, 6 different images, 4, 5, 6 different headlines, 4, 5, 6 different texts, give the information to Facebook and let them help you find the best combinations of creative text and headlines. Especially now, get in there nice and early because Facebook, when they try something new, they like to give nice discounts on CPM.
That's true. And so, by the way, this is also why it's very important also to stay, up to date with the latest, because things are always changing. And if you're not, following, their newsletters and whatnot, you might miss out and you might not, be you might fall behind the competition because they're paying attention. And actually, even more important than that are these sort of webinars here, where you're able to actually hear from experts themselves that are experiencing them. Because believe me, I've dealt with a lot of Facebook account reps. They aren't nearly as knowledgeable or experienced as to how to use Facebook than these guys here. So take advantage of opportunities you have like this in order to hear them speak and ask them questions. By the way, we can take this offline. I mean, if you check the chat, we have our Twitter links, so feel free to reach out to us via Twitter, and we'll try to answer you guys. And yeah, it's really been a pleasure. My camera just got messed up. It's really been a pleasure, and I look forward to hosting you guys again, and my next webinar with SEM Rush.
Awesome, thanks for having us.
Thanks
You're
a lot,
very
guys.
welcome.